Good day, everyone. Today we are going to talk about the characteristics of and structures of market and consumer. Meet Mrs. Lopez, the consumer. Like every Filipino consumer, Mrs. Lopez loves to shop and spend. She makes her purchases in a. But first, let us define what is a market. A market is a place that exchange goods and services takes place as a result of buyers and sellers being in contact with one another. It is either directly or through mediating agents or institutions such as money for a cell phone. The economic system you're probably most familiar with is a free market. First, let us define what is a free market. A free market is an unregulated system of economic exchange in which taxes, quality controls, quotas, tariffs, and other forms of centralized economic intervention by government. It is either do not exist or minimal, such as setting prices or telling business what they can produce. Mrs. Lopez is always on the lookout for good deals. For her, some markets are better than the others. And she considered the four types of market structure. First is the perfectly competitive market. Second is the monopoly. Third is the monopolistic competition. And fourth is the oligopoly. Lopez will usually find the best bargains in a perfectly competition market. So, perfectly competition market. This type of market is characterized by large number of small business that sell the same types of product with the same characteristics. This is easy for businesses to enter the market and leave it. Everyone has all the information and technology needed to make smart and informed decisions in market. In perfectly competitive market, business have to compete on price because all the products are basically the same. Thus, Mrs. Lopez can get the best price available because businesses will compete with each other by lowering prices. Of course, in the real world, it does not exist. And the closest example of this is the commodity like oranges at the grocery store. A navel orange is the new valerian. The most possible market for Mrs. Lopez that is worse is the monopoly. A monopoly is you can only buy the product you want from a sole seller. No other business offers the same thing. It is very hard if it is not possible for new business to enter. For example, a drug company with a patent of the new drug will have a monopoly on that medicine until the patent expires. There is no competition. It has a great degree power in the market. Second, determination on how much good or service to supply the market. And third, great deal of pricing goods and services. So let us now proceed to the demand curve of the monopoly. What is a demand curve? So first, the average revenue and marginal revenue is different because the price is increasing and decreasing because of the monopoly power, in which the monopoly power is the ability of the producer or of the firm to control the price. The business can charge goods and services as high as buyers, like Mrs. Lopez, are willing to pay. Of course, if the price is too high, Mrs. Lopez and other potential purchasers will not buy. Next is the monopolistic competition. This has a large number, like in every perfectly competitive market. However, in market, business do not sell identical products like finds in a perfectly competitive market. Instead, they sell similar products. This means that businesses can compete not only on the price but also different characteristics of their products. For example, there is a wide variety of clothing which cafe can choose. It's also pretty easy for businesses to enter and leave the market like perfectly competitive market. There's also a good deal of information and on price and technology available to business and consumers. However, none is not perfect like in the perfectly competitive market.
Is there also a demand curve in monopolistic competition? Yes. First is the long run. Long-run firms will enter a profitable monopolistically competitive industry and unprofitable one. Next, competitor will earn only a normal profit in long run. In other words, this will only break even. Remember that the cost curves includes both explicit and implicit costs, including a normal profit. Next is the predatory pricing. This is the lowering of the price when a new firm will enter.
And lastly, the oligopoly. This consists of few large businesses that sell either identical or very similar products. These industries are marked by a small number of businesses that requires a high degree on initial capital investment, which makes entry by new business difficulty. Nevertheless, business oligopoly do not compete on price and other characteristics of their product and services. An example of this includes the oil industry and auto manufacturing.
So let us now proceed to the possible cause of mutual interdependence. First is the collusion. This is the cooperation with rivals, price of one, price of all. This occurs when firms in an industry reach an agreement to fix price, divided up the market, or otherwise restrict competition among themselves. But the disadvantage and uncertainties of non-collusive king-demand oligopolies are obvious. There is always the danger of price war breaking out, especially during a general business recession. Next is the cartel. This is the association of manufacturers or suppliers with the purpose of maintaining prices at a high level and restricted competition. Next is the price war. This results for two competitors in which both will experience loss, and to prevent this, they will just talk to each other or have an agreement. The kink demand curve of the oligopoly is: first, demand above the kink is elastic. Second, demand below the kink is inelastic. To sum up them all, let us now proceed to the characteristics of the four structures of market, beginning with the pure competition. In terms of sellers, large number of buyers and sellers. In the type of product, it is homogeneous or standardized product. The control over price there is no control. The copy's price of another firm and this cannot change market price, it can only adjust to it. The entry and exit is freedom of entry exit and exit. New firms can freely enter and exit. The substitute is perfectly substitute. The demand curve is perfectly elastic. Non-price competition, there is none. And examples of this is fruits and vegetables. And in additional information, in a purely competitive industry, there is a large number of competitive firms. The perfect competition is defined as if the buyers and sellers have complete knowledge or access to information, example, the stock market, and the nearest homogeneous products are the agri-products. And in pure monopoly, there is only one seller. The firm is the industrial itself, and it is unique and full control, in which price setter and price maker, there is a price discrimination occurs. Monopolies creates barriers to entry, and there is no close substitution. Its demand curve is relatively inelastic, in which this means that downward is sloping. And public relations advertising, the example of these are water, electricity, and trains. And the monopsy is single buyer, and the barriers are patents or the intellectual property rights. Franchise, all raw materials are owned by the producers, and this state monopolies. And in monopolistic competition, sellers are sufficiently large number. The type of product is identical but differentiated products. Some are limited control, non-price competition. There is control over the price, or what we call the mono. Relatively easy entry and exit, and its substitute is parietal substitute. High elastic demand, which means that downward sloping, and the non-price competition are emphasis on advertising, brand names, and trademarks. The example of these are soaps, shoes, and dress. And monopolistic competition is more competitive than oligopoly, in which the more seller, the higher competition. Non-price competition, competition in terms of product differentiation, includes branding and packaging, location, service, and heavy advertising. And lastly, the oligopoly. There is only a few sellers. This can be homogeneous or identical but differentiated, limited by mutual interdependence based on their decisions on how they think rivals will react, and considerable with collusion. There is also a difficulty to enter. Kink curve are partial oligopoly, elastic, and the complete oligopoly is relatively elastic. The advantage for product differentiation is the non-price competition, and gasoline car industry are one of the examples of oligopoly. And in additional information, it is a duopoly or two sellers. This can be homogeneous, pure, complete oligopoly, which includes crude oils from different countries. Differentiated or partial oligopoly, refined oil industry. It is also a mutual interdependence. Each firm's profit depends not entirely on its own price and sales strategies but also on those of the other firms.
Would be all. Thank you and God bless.